Welcome to the Fedora Podcast, a proud member of the Destination Linux Network. This is Season 2, Episode 8. This is the podcast to teach you about how the Fedora community works. We bring you news, interviews, and more. I'm Grayson, and today my co-host Edward brings us an interview with Ben Cotton, the Fedora Program Manager.
Hello, Ben.
Hello, it's good to be here.
Thank you for coming. Well, your role is the Fedora Program Manager in the Fedora Project. So what is the Fedora Program Manager role inside the Fedora Project?
Well, I like to think of it as the chief cat herding officer. But really, there's sort of a core set of duties that revolve around planning and scheduling the releases, which includes tracking change proposals and the implementation of changes during the development cycle, and then release time coordinating with the QA team, release engineering, the Fedora Engineering Steering Committee, and other bodies within Fedora to make sure we get the release out on time and we're meeting all of our criteria. I also coordinate with internal Red Hat teams, particularly my fellow program managers who work on Red Hat Enterprise Linux, because they are a downstream of Fedora. What we do here in Fedora then goes on to impact Red Hat's products. So part of my role is to be a liaison with them, as well as sometimes with development teams within Red Hat who are working on things in Fedora. So I frequently meet with the DNF team as an example, because a lot of what they do lands first in Fedora, and it's very user visible. And obviously, we want to make sure we're well coordinated, and we make sure Fedora issues get raised to them quickly so that they have time to fix things before releases. I also am the wrangler for our elections, so I make sure that the elections get announced on time, that candidates submit their interviews, that the interviews get published, and then actually set up the election app and announce the results. I also run the prioritized bug process, which is sort of a way for people to say that a bug that may not be a release blocker is still really important and high visibility, and we want to try and get extra attention paid to it and try and get that closed more quickly. And then the last part of the core duties of my job is to serve as an auxiliary member of the Fedora Council. So I'm one of the people who are hired by Red Hat to work specifically on Fedora. And so my role on the council is largely providing some of the administrative support. So, setting meeting agendas, making sure we're staying on topic, publishing results, things like that. So that's all the sort of the part that is in the job description. And then there's a lot of other places that I contribute because Fedora is such an important part of my open source journey, and is important to the work I do at Red Hat. So I'm an editor for the community blog and Fedora magazine. I jump in and help with website updates. I maintain a few packages. I provide a little bit of program management type support to the IoT team. And then I go to conferences and staff the booth and give presentations. And these are all sort of things that aren't necessarily core to being the program manager. So, stuff that my predecessors didn't necessarily do, and whoever the next program manager is at some point when I move on won't necessarily do. But those are sort of like the extra things that I do to try and help Fedora overall.
Yeah, but that's more like any other contributor can do, not specifically related to the role.
Right. One of the things that I've found is that because Fedora is my day job, there are a lot of opportunities for me to jump in and help that I didn't necessarily have when I was working, somewhere else, because, I'm sitting there paying attention to Fedora all day. So I notice things quickly because I'm not having to go pay attention to my other job. So that's like, with the websites thing is a good example of, it was release day and there was some of the website stuff was wrong. I was like, well, I'm here right now, so I'll just jump in and fix it.
Yeah, I get it. So something that maybe you can clarify to me And as part of your role, you work with some of the upstreams project we work in, for example, like Genome or DAX specifically for the developers.
Not really. That's one of the things that I would really actually love to do more of in the future is, Fedora is downstream of a lot of really big projects like GNOME, like KDE, the Linux kernel, stuff like that. And I would love to have more interaction with the major upstream pieces, mostly in sort of a listen in mode. But if there's a significant delay in the GNOME schedule, then that's going to severely impact Fedora Workstation. And they're also on a 6-month release cycle that basically it leads ours by a short amount of time. So GNOME release comes out, and a few weeks later, it's packaged in Fedora, and we're getting ready to do the release. So having more coordination between some of our bigger upstreams would be great. And also, I'd really love to be able to have more coordination with sort of peer projects. So, OpenSUSE, Debian, things like that, where we have, other, other distributions or other sort of similarly sized, similarly diverse projects. We're all sort of doing the same work. Everybody has releases they get out. Everybody needs to coordinate, with QA and things like that. And, different projects do it differently, but we're all sort of doing the same core ideas. And it'd be really nice to have this coordination where we could build sort of a body of knowledge together and, help each other get better at how we do our processes.
Yeah. Another question that normally I ask to everyone that is in the podcast is how people can help with you, or how can you help the community? I mean, where is a place where you can interact with both community with you and you with the community?
Yeah, so I try and stay really involved in the community. A lot of times I'm sort of silently involved. There's a lot of mailing lists that I'm subscribed to that I don't ever speak up on, and I spend a lot of time in different IRC channels which I don't usually talk. But a lot of my job is just making sure that all the different moving parts within Fedora know what's going on. So a lot of it is just making sure the information is getting from one place to another. And so to that end, I do weekly posts on the Fedora community blog where I list some, sort of the high level things, announcements on, package updates, change proposal statuses, release schedules, deadlines, things like that. And then things that are coming up. So that way the community kind of has one central place as a starting point to say, all right, what's going on right now? So really the best help I could get from the community would be to make sure that I know about what you're doing. So, if you're on a team or, doing something, send me an email and say, hey, we're getting ready to announce this thing, or, we're doing this major transition of, some platform. We're gonna, if you're a language SIG, hey, we're gonna update the language stack in Rawhide. Make sure I can get that word out. And then I'd love to see more people contributing to the community blog. It's a great place for people to, sort of give internal community-facing content announcements. And it's in a central place because, there's no one mailing list that everybody's subscribed to. There's no one IRC channel that everybody's in. A lot of times people think of Devel as, the mailing list that everyone's on, but there are a lot of people in Fedora who don't contribute from an engineering standpoint. They're working on design or translations, or they're, ambassadors or advocates, other roles where they may not actually be interested in most of the traffic that goes on the Devel mailing list. And so, having a place for people to get that communication back and forth is sort of the hard problem that my role is largely here to work on.
Yeah. As a non-technical part that I am in the Fedora project, I see I don't remember. I think you say this called Fedora Program Manager office hours, where we can connect to you with you in IRC quickly and easily to talk about things. Even the invitation from the podcast I sending you from there, because I know for sure that you will be there working with the community.
Yeah, so I hold office hours Wednesdays at 9 a.m. Eastern, which is currently 1300 UTC, and that's in the Fedora Meeting One channel on IRC, and it's just an hour of me sitting there, and there's no structure. I'll usually start off the meeting by dropping a few announcements in there, and then it's sort of open session for people to drop in if they have something to talk about, or if they just want to say hi. And if nobody shows up, then I work on email until somebody pops in. But I think that's a really important part of my job, is to be visible and available to the community. In a corporate kind of program management role, program managers usually don't have a lot of authority, but they have the ability to, if somebody's not getting stuff done or not working well together, they can go to that person's manager, somewhere, and put some pressure on it. In a community like Fedora, I have no ability to go talk to somebody's manager. It's entirely, the only way I can be successful in my job is to have credibility within the community, and for the community to trust me and trust that I'm acting in their interests. And so I try really hard to earn that trust and to keep it. And part of that is just being available. Even if nobody shows up some weeks, that's fine, because I was still there.
Yeah. I want to go back to something that you comment that was part of your core duties. That is the release coordination. I mean, did you plan the dates with every part of the release? When is the beta release? When the freeze in the infrastructure starts? When it ends? And how the release coordination dates are planned by you?
Yes. So the basics of the schedule are actually fairly unchanged from the time I started contributing to Fedora about 10 or 11 years ago. Obviously, we've made some changes since then. We don't do alpha releases anymore, for one. But a lot of the schedule preparation that I do now is just copying the previous release's schedule and updating the date. So I change the target final date, and all the other dates sort of change and cascade. All the tasks are dependent in some number of layers on the final release date. But one of the things that I do, basically every release cycle, is we find things where, boy, it'd be nice if that deadline was a little bit earlier because we're, running late on things. Or, every few releases, I'll just go to a bunch of different teams and say, look, here's the tasks for your team and the release schedule. Do these still make sense? Sometimes we stop doing something because it's not useful anymore, or we just don't have the people available to do it. And so, there's no point in having that on the schedule anymore. Or we decide certain things where, it'd be really helpful to have some sort of reminder checkpoint, like, oh, here's the time we should, do whatever task before the release. And so we'll make tweaks to it. So, we're not reinventing the schedule every release, but, no release has quite the same schedule. We're sort of always making iterative improvements to it.
Yeah, I make this question because it's widely commented that the Fedora release is aligned with the GNOME releases.
Mm-hmm.
So this is true in any way? We are really aligning our releases with GNOME, or is just pure casuality?
So that's definitely a consideration. I think that was, I don't know if it was done intentionally, but it's part of the reason why we keep our release cadence where it is because it's somewhere between 4 and 6 weeks, I think, when the GNOME GA is, and then the Fedora GA. Obviously, there are a lot of different upstream projects that we could tie our release schedule around, and we have in the past made changes to our release schedule. But we think about the major components that go into Fedora, especially on our editions, and we want to make sure that we're releasing as harmoniously as we can.
Yeah. Another question that I'm interested to do is because your work is not necessarily tied to developer, and it's not as specialized as, for example, a designer that need to have design tools, or for a developer to have a specific IDE or some specific libraries to work. I'm interested in which tools do you use to do the program manager work.
Email, and then some more email, and some more email. I think that's probably the biggest one. But we talked about all the different tasks that I do that are both sort of core to the job and things that I do because I have time to dedicate to Fedora. First of all, I think the biggest one that's helpful is I have a Taiga board that I use basically for myself, where I have dozens of cards in various states where I'm keeping track of what it is that I'm working on, what I'm waiting for somebody else, and some of the work I have planned. A lot of my work in terms of like managing change process and things like that, and Bugzilla housekeeping. There's a lot of small Python and Perl scripts that will parse the wiki pages and produce more wiki pages, or they'll produce open bugs for things like that. And there are scripts that will go through and given a file of bugs that are going to reach end of life, go through and make the automatic Bugzilla updates and stuff like that. So a lot of it is just this small task automation, things like that. And then the actual schedule itself now is there's a software as a service tool that Red Hat uses called Smartsheet. And so that's what I actually generate the schedule in. And then there's an open source Python tool that takes that output and generates it into the schedules I publish to the web.
Oh, cool. If I remember correctly, Taiga board is an open source Kanban board style software?
Yeah, so Taiga is an open source program manage or project management kind of platform. It has Kanban boards. It has issue tracker. It's designed to be sort of like Jira, in that sort of level of different ability to have different workflows and different kinds of objects. And it is open source. It's we have an instance that Fedora pays for, hosted by the Taiga project at teams.fedoraproject.org. So that's available for anyone within Fedora to create a project for their team. So, for example, Fedora Magazine uses that for the editorial workflow to track articles in different states and things like that. It's a good tool for collaborating across teams.
Yeah, that's what I remember Taiga, because I saw the magazine was using it. Well, Ben, I don't have any more questions for you. If you have something that you want to share with the community, or any comment you want to do in the podcast to let the people know what are you doing, what are you working, where we can find you, how we can help, or any other comment you want to do to the community.
Yeah, so I'm here to serve the community. I've been a Fedora user and contributor for a long time, and now it's my day job. So I feel very fortunate to be here, and I want to help help the community as much as I can. So, and if anyone ever has suggestions or questions, the best way to reach me is via email. My email is bcotton@redhat.com or bcotton@fedoraproject.org. I'm on IRC pretty much all day during my work day, and I'm usually logged in on evening, so you can leave a message and hope I don't have to reboot my laptop before I see it or something. I hold those office hours, weekly on Wednesdays, and basically I'm open, anytime to help the community, and if there are things I can do to help, do some of the administrative, planning and staying on top of tasks and schedules for teams, I'm happy to help. I'm happy to provide, sort of consulting and advice, whatever it takes to make Fedora successful.
Well, I have a recommendation for you because part of your work is so transversal in the project. I think you will be a really good asset in the joint SIG. Because I know that you will be able to direct people to the right team to collaborate.
Yeah, the joint SIG's doing great work. That's a really great suggestion because I've been really happy to see the new process they rolled out last year, and it's a great group of people. So that's definitely a place I should start contributing to more.
Ben, thank you for coming. That was a really interesting interview.
Well, thank you for having me. It's great to be on here.
Thanks for listening. That was Season 2, Episode 8 of the Fedora Podcast, a proud member of the Destination Linux Network. Please visit podcast.fedoraproject.org to find our chat room, send us email, listen to other episodes, and more. I'm your host, Grayson, and Edward did the interview for today. And Tricknology made our music. Please subscribe, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.